I'd like to call this meeting to order. If everyone would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It's particularly important tonight that those of you in the audience sign in the back. And because we have our friends from Tetra Tech here recording this meeting, I also need all of my council colleagues at the end of tonight's meeting to also sign in the back as well. So if you'd remember to do that, it would be greatly appreciated. So you have an agenda in front of you. Present this evening are myself, Mayor Morrow, Council Members Burgoyne, Gearbaugh, Peters, Rhodes, Roth, and Tahar. We have a number of staff people present. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as submitted unless there are amendments?
So moved.
Moved by Peters to approve as submitted.
Submitted.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Roth. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, Mr. Rhodes.
I would like to move C 1396 to unfinished business.
Okay, and that's part of the consent agenda, is that correct?
Correct.
All right, so that will require an approval of an amended consent agenda when we get to that motion. And then item 1396 will go at the end of, actually, we're going to put that at the end of unfinished business, so it will immediately follow, well, actually, it'll be the only business under, the only item under unfinished business, excuse me. So 1396, okay? So, Mr. Peters, I assume that you're comfortable now approving the agenda as amended. Mr. Roth is the seconder, okay? Is there anything else? Okay? Then all those in favor of approving the agenda as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries. We have no absences, so we'll dispense with that motion. Up next, we have Chase Stanton, who's our SETN cable station manager. He's going to come forward and share with us a Saline community video. So, Chase, we welcome you whenever you are able to come forward.
Bear with us for some technical difficulties.
Plan B.
All right, let's make sure we're all connected up here. And I apologize, we weren't able to get audio out through the speakers in the room, so they're going to be running through these little computer speakers. Before we get started, just as Mayor Marl said, I'm Chase Stanton. I run the city's community television station, Channel 18. We put this video together at the request of the city and the schools to kind of celebrate the award that the city received as the best place to raise kids in Michigan. There's a lot of people I'd like to thank, more than I probably have time to, but I will say that if anyone wants to look at the video after we show it tonight, it will be on our Vimeo, which is vimeo.com/SCTN/18, and that will have a list of everyone who contributed to the video, including people such as Mayor Morrow and Todd Campbell. But I want to thank everyone who did contribute it. You know who you are. It was a labor of love, but I think it turned out really nice. And I will say that as you watch the interviews, this is just a very short part of all of the great things people had to say about the city and what a great place it is to raise kids. So take in mind that this is probably 1/100th of everything that people had to say.
This Justin, Bloomberg Businessweek named Saline the best city to raise kids in Michigan. The article mentions our annual Celtic Festival and our close proximity with Ann Arbor's sports and art scene as reasons for the award. Let's roll the tape.
we like to think of ourselves as a very family-friendly community.
I'm very proud that our school district truly attempts to meet the needs of every student.
All those old-fashioned American values are really alive here in Saline.
I can say, having been a parent and raised my son here in the school district, that it is a really amazing community to raise children.
From its roots in a small agricultural community, Saline has developed into a city that offers all of the modern amenities of a big city, but still has its small town charm.
Saline has so many nice attributes to it. From a small community, we are a family-oriented community.
Saline still does have a small town feel.
That small town community feel extend all over town.
I think that does bring a sense of community pride.
It's second to none, being a small place and not too far from where all the action is. Everybody knows everybody.
I think people really enjoy seeing the success of a small town.
You can really tell that the families that live in our community are connected to their neighbors, to their classmates and other students in their community.
The people who live here want to live in a smaller town, but we want to live close to the amenities that the universities offer, to excellent health care, some of the best hospitals in the world. But we have that closeness. I know my neighbors. Everyone takes care of each other. You look out for each other.
Saline is 7 miles south of Ann Arbor, which is an ideal place to be because you can live in Saline and feel like you're in a small, intimate community, but yet just 20 minutes away you can take advantage of all of the opportunities that the University of Michigan offers.
One of the key aspects of Saline that I think we are able to leverage in meaningful ways is our proximity to Ann Arbor, the University of Michigan, Ypsilanti, and Eastern Michigan University, and in the Metro Detroit area.
I think Saline has done a really good job of taking advantage of all the things that are really on the positive side. You know, Ann Arbor has much to offer. It's, you know, essentially it's an internationally known city.
The university activities and the museums, that's, you know, a wonderful opportunity for kids.
It's 6 miles down the road and you're in Ann Arbor, you know, it doesn't get any better than that. You can get anything you need, you can go to the best hospitals around.
The really excellent hospitals that we have available, U of M being close by, and we have clinics and family doctors are right here in Saline.
We're also on a main drag, US 12, but we're not right next to a major expressway within a half mile. We have access to the major expressways, which can take us to our destinies beyond.
Who we are is because of everything that happens in the Washtenaw County.
I think we're right in the best spot you could be.
Whether it's the holiday parade or Summerfest, there's always something for families to do in Saline.
Everything goes on around here. We have the Celtic Festival,
which is held down at Mill Pond Park, and that attracts thousands of people for this one-day event with a Celtic theme.
We also, later on in the summer, uptown have Summerfest, which features music, an art show, all sorts of entertainment.
In the fall, we have an Oktoberfest and the Harvest of the Arts.
I would be remiss in not mentioning the track shows, of course, because of the fact that it does bring community to Saline.
we have the parade, that small hometown parade.
Of course, my favorite is the holiday parade. I'm sorry, I can't help that, but it is. But yeah, we do have a lot of volunteers that help us with that.
It seems like Saline is one of those communities that it doesn't matter what you have going on, somebody wants to help.
Community volunteers are vital for Saline. I'm noticing that more and more young people are very active as volunteers. Saline Youth Council, certainly, we have 13 incredible young people who volunteer up to 200 hours in 1 month.
If you have something that you are willing to work on, you have so many volunteers, you have to turn away volunteers. And that's just the greatest thing in the world.
Saline achieves high academic standings each year with programs that not only emphasize math and science, but also art and culture.
Parents send their kids to us, care about education. Historically, our community has cared about education and has been innovative in our approaches.
The schools are the best around. And I put my children through the schools and I'm really impressed with the teachers, the curriculum, and how it prepared them for college.
the school itself, it draws you here, but the whole area keeps you here.
Certainly, our Saline area schools is a world-class school system. The state tops in the state and nationally, and the resources, the opportunities that are afforded our students from preschool all the way up beyond high school, especially for us, our special education programming is, again, world-class.
The teaching staff is unbelievable. You talk about giving, that's what the staff here does.
They do have a high academic standards. They also demand a lot from their parents.
And I think there's a wide range of clubs and sports and different activities that kids can get involved in. If they're not athletic, there's lots of other clubs and sports that are available for the kids to join.
We have a comprehensive high school that has a great deal of opportunity for students, no matter what your passion is, whether it be career or technical education, whether it be advanced placement courses, an outstanding and complete array of extracurricular activities. We also have a very strong program for students with special needs.
We have a fantastic school system that is benefiting our students and our community.
And that graduation day for us in June of every year is a really special opportunity for us to unite as a community.
Most importantly, Saline values communities and family, a place where neighbors know one another and are willing to lend a helping hand.
Congratulations, Saline.
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 Congratulations for winning the award, Saline.
You earned this one.
You did earn this award.
You deserve it.
We've worked hard, but I think we really deserve it.
Congratulations. Well, Chase, that was really something. Thank you for putting that together. Very impressive. So in addition to being on Vimeo, I'm assuming we'll get that up on Facebook, on our website.
Yeah, we'd like to promote it as much as possible.
Very good. Okay.
And if I could take a moment, I just want to get the word out that SCTN and the station are always willing to hear input from the community, and we want to be more present in the community. And I'd like to thank everyone again, and feel free to call me, email me anytime. We really want to get out there and let everyone know we want to be part of the community as much as possible.
Thanks, Chase.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Okay, at this time, I need to entertain a motion to convene into closed session to consider material exempt from discussion or disclosure by state or federal statute, in particular discuss a confidential written legal opinion subject to the attorney-client privilege. Is there a motion? Moved by Mr. Gearbaugh. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Tahar. The clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember Rhodes?
Yes.
Councilmember Tahar?
Yes.
Councilmember Gearbaugh?
Yes.
Councilmember Peters?
Yes.
Councilmember Roth?
Yes.
Councilmember Burgoyne?
Yes.
Mayor Murrow?
Yes. So we are adjourning to closed session at 7:52 p.m. and council will reconvene into a regular open meeting at the conclusion of our closed session. Okay, we need a motion to end the closed session and return into the regular open meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Gearbaugh, seconded by Mr. Roth. The clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember Rhodes?
Yes.
Councilmember Tahar?
Yes.
Councilmember Gearbaugh?
Yes.
Councilmember Peters?
Yes.
Councilmember Roth?
Yes.
And Councilmember Burgoyne?
Yes.
Mayor Murrow?
Yes, so we've reconvened at 8:38 p.m.
I'll move to authorize the city attorney to proceed in accordance with the city attorney's confidential written legal opinion subject to attorney-client privilege as given during the closed session earlier this evening.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Gearbaugh to authorize. It's been seconded by Mr. Rhodes. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries. Moving on to citizen comments on agenda items. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time and make comment or question on an item or items that appear on this agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested, but not required, to state his or her name and address for the record.
Mary Hess, and regarding the Flag Day, I would hope that on not only the proclamation, but that it be flown with pride and also in good shape. Maybe people can look at their flag and make sure that it's not torn or frayed. The other thing is 1301, which is the alley arch design behind Brecken Grill and beside the old Caesar pizza place. My concern was months ago, when they planned on closing this for people to sit, was the delivery system as far as for those merchants using this alley. Apparently, the cost is going to come out of the $53,000 that's put for Main Street. But my concern is who's going to draw the straws over who will use this area. If the brick building that was Caesar's, if they want to use it, are they going to be able to use it? Is Manjama's going to use it? I think it's like judging a baby contest. You can't win. But the other comment is on in the budget, and it's our emergency preparedness. You only have $2,600 in the budget for FEMA. As we know, storms do come through, and it definitely is a pittance. We have had some storms come through and damage, and just taking the pictures and picking up the limbs and everything. They usually ask for a percentage more than that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hess. Are there any other citizen comments? No, then we move on to the consent agenda. The following consent agenda will normally be adopted without discussion. However, at the request of any citizen or council member, any item may be removed from the consent agenda for council discussion. Please recall that we've already removed item C-13-96, which has been placed under unfinished business, and there's one correction to item C-13-95. That motion should read to approve, not approve, or not to approve. Okay? It's just a small typo. Okay? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Gearbaugh. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Roth. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries. Moving on to public hearings, item 12-34. This is the wastewater treatment plant rehabilitation project. This is a public hearing on the proposed wastewater treatment plant improvements for the purpose of receiving comments from interested parties. This public hearing is a requirement for the approval of the city's draft project plan and low-interest loan and grant awards. I'll first need a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Tahar, and I'll let Mr. Gearbaugh be the second. Since there's no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, and the public hearing is now open. First, we're going to have a presentation / overview of public hearing requirements by Vic Cooperwasser of Tetra Tech. I invite you to come forward at this time. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Good evening. Before I get started, I need to get this sign-in sheet passed around. It's a slightly different format that the DEQ requires, and so if I could have it started here and passed around.
Yep, please start with Mr. Roth.
I'm going to read a statement that's required by the DEQ for this project plan And I will distribute copies of that statement to the council and have some extras up here. The City of Saline has applied for and received an S2 grant for preparation of the project plan for wastewater system improvements. A project plan is part of the planning documents for the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, DEQ, Low Interest Loan State Revolving Fund, SRF program. If money remains, Saline will be in line to receive S2 grant funds for the design of wastewater system improvements consisting of upgrading the digester system and construction of a cascade weir box. Additionally, the project plan also includes an evaluation of other longer-term improvements to the facility. A public hearing is a regulatory requirement for a complete project plan. According to MDEQ regulations, this public hearing must describe the following 4 items. Number 1, the water quality problems to be addressed by the project and the alternatives that were considered. The City of Saline owns and operates a wastewater treatment plant, WWTP, with a capacity of 1.81 million gallons per day, MGD. The WWTP was constructed in the early 1950s and had major improvements completed in 1985-86. During the mid-1990s, sludge storage, odor control, and septic handling facilities were added. A new grit removal system, ultraviolet disinfection, and additional sludge storage were added in 2007. Several alternatives were reviewed to determine the most cost-effective approach to upgrading the WWTP in order for it to continue to reliably meet its discharge permit requirements. The potential alternatives to take no action, to optimize the performance of the existing treatment processes, or to abandon the wastewater treatment plant and connect to the city's wastewater collection system to a regional plant were reviewed and were rejected because they either would not meet the regulatory discharge requirements or they would be far too costly. Various improvements were reviewed and the alternatives considered were as follows. A, rotating biological contactors, also known as RBCs. 1, rehabilitate the RBCs, or 2, replace the RBCs with extended aeration. B, tertiary treatment filters. 1, rehabilitate sand filters, or 2, replace the sand filters with disc-type filters. C, generator transfer switch. 1, automatic transfer switch or secondary power source. D, secondary clarifier drives. 1, replace the mechanisms. 2, replace the mechanisms upon failure. E, odor scrubbers. 1, refurbish the existing system, or 2, replace existing system with a biofilter. F, bar screen. Refurbish the existing system, or 2, replace the existing system. G, septage, receiving, and handling system. 1, replace the existing equipment in place, or 2, provide a new septage receiving system complete. H, structural repairs. 1, complete the repairs, or 2, take no action, and that wasn't feasible. I, supervisory control and data acquisition, or SCADA system. Monitor and control, or monitor only. J, digesters. 1, upgrade the existing digester system, or 2, construct a new lime stabilization system. K, dissolved oxygen enhancement. 1, construct a cascade weir box, or 2, add aeration equipment. The recommended alternative, including capital costs and a cost breakdown by project components. The recommended alternative options and capital costs for the improvements at the wastewater plant are as follows. Immediate needs, digesters. Upgrade the existing digester system, $1,668,740. Next bullet, dissolved oxygen enhancement. Construct a cascade weir box for $20,000. Longer-term improvements, longer-term projects. And this is the list for those longer-term projects. Rotating biological contactors, or RBCs. Rehabilitate the RBCs for $323,600. Tertiary treatment filters. Replace sand filters with disc-type filters for $950,000. Generator transfer switch. Use an automatic transfer switch for $75,000. Secondary clarifier drives, replace the mechanisms for $607,000. Odor scrubbers, refurbish existing system, $50,000. Bar screen, refurbish existing equipment for $50,000. Septage receiving and handling system, replace existing equipment, $325,000. Structural repairs, complete repairs, $157,659. SCADA system, monitor only for $100,000. 3, the project financing and cost to users, including the proposed method of project financing and estimated debt retirement and proposed charge to the typical residential customer. The city plans to proceed initially with items identified above as immediate needs, including the digester system and cascade weir box, with capital costs as given above of $1,668,740 plus $20,000 for a total of $1,688,740. Per the project plan, the current quarterly sewer bill based on 18,000 gallons of usage per quarter is $90.26. The city may choose to pay for this project from available wastewater treatment plant capital reserve funds or through a low-interest MDEQ SRF loan. The wastewater treatment plant's current operation and maintenance costs will not be affected by these improvements. If the city decides to pay for the project using a low-interest MDEQ SRF loan, the annual debt service for 20 years would be approximately equal to $1,688,740 times 0.06116 equals $103,284 per year. The approximate number of meter equivalents billed per year is 19,348 in quarterly billings. Therefore, the approximate quarterly charge to the typical residential customer for these immediate improvements would be equal to $103,284 divided by 19,348, or $5.34. The estimated total cost of the remaining future improvements listed above is $2,639,259. The estimated annual debt service for the future improvements based on a similar MDEQ SRF loan would be approximately equal to $2,638,259 times 0.06116 equals $161,356. Therefore, the approximate quarterly charge to the typical residential customer for the future improvements would be equal to $161,356 divided by 19,348 equals $8.34. The anticipated social and environmental impacts associated with the recommended alternative and the measures that will be taken to mitigate the adverse impacts. The construction of the proposed wastewater treatment plant improvements should have no effect on historical, archaeological, geological, cultural, or recreational areas because the construction will occur on the site of the existing wastewater treatment plant. The construction of the proposed improvements will help ensure long-term reliability and efficiency at the wastewater treatment plant, therefore preserving water quality in the Saline River. The project will not detrimentally affect the water quality or of surface or groundwater of the area, air quality, wetlands, endangered species, wild and scenic rivers, or unique agricultural land. The short-term adverse impacts associated with construction activities will be minimal in comparison to the long-term water quality benefits resulting from the proposed project. There will be no long-term risk to public health or safety due to the proposed project. Adverse impacts due to construction activities such as noise, dust, and construction traffic cannot be avoided. However, efforts will be made to minimize the adverse impacts by use of good design and construction techniques. The City Council must adopt the project plan prior to the July 1, 2013 project plan submittal deadline date. Public attendance must be recorded. Public comments must be recorded and publicly addressed. I will now open this public hearing to any public comments. Written public comments will be received until June 6, 2013, and will be included in the final project plan, which will be delivered to the MDEQ by July 1, 2013. The MDEQ will rank this project and determine if it is eligible for a low-interest SRF loan in mid-August. The draft project plan is available for review at Saline City Clerks, Saline City Hall, 100 North Harris Street, Saline, Michigan, 48176, Saline Public Library, 555 North Maple Road, Saline, Michigan, 48186, Saline Wastewater Treatment Plant, 247 Monroe Street, Saline, Michigan, 48176. The city will determine whether to construct the project with a low-interest MDEQ SRF loan or from an alternate funding source no later than the fall of 2013. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper-Wasser. Appreciate you indulging us. The public hearing is now open per a motion from, moved by Ms. Tahar, seconded by Mr. Gearboss. So if is anyone from the public who would like to come forward and make a comment under a 3-minute time limit, you are now welcome to do so. Are there any citizen comments?
Move to close.
It's been moved by Mr. Gearboss to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Tahar. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. This public hearing is now closed. Thank you again. Sign-in sheet, I believe, is working its way around the room. Please do not forget to sign in. Again, this is all a little dry and technical, but it is a requirement from MDEQ. Okay? Now we have next up, we have a motion to confirm the acceptance or denial of the completed WWTP project plan will be acted on at the June 17th, 2013 regular Saline City Council meeting. Is there a motion?
Motion to confirm.
Moved by Mr. Burgoyne to confirm. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Peters. Discussion. Mr. Burgoyne.
Yeah, I have a question for Mr. Cooper-Wasser. There are two immediate items. The first is upgrade existing digester system, and the other item is to enhance dissolved oxygen. Now, both of those things will make the plant work better. So my question is, will there be any reduction in the potential odors that are connected with such a plan? Does improving the system give you a better outcome with regards to odor?
It might be a more appropriate question for Mr. Scull, if you wouldn't mind speaking from the podium, Mr. Scull.
The short answer is not likely.
No change.
The odor scrubber is designed to pull odors off the RBCs, not the digester. And there may be some stray odors from the digester that may be improved by better mixing with the new system. But the primary concern of the digester rehab was just the functionality. The old system was just added the ends of life. Is that it?
Good, Mr. Burgoyne?
Yeah.
Mr. Gearbaugh.
As I mentioned in the last meeting, I was concerned about the septage receiving not being included as part of this project, even though council had pushed it forward and everything. I want to make sure that we aren't jeopardizing, because potentially we could have used the revolving loan fund to help support paying for that, because then we could build it into the fees and recover that cost. Have we basically closed ourselves out of that at this point for a year, or if someone would address that?
I think that'd be a better question for our Tetra Tech team.
And then I'd also would like Mr. Scull just to address whether or not our septage can last another year or so.
We do have that added as a discussion item, but if
Right,
you want
but I
him
want as
to-
part of this
Yep.
because this would.
Gentlemen, if you'd come
that's my
forward to the
vote.
podium, please. Did you both hear Mr. Gearbaugh's question?
Yes, as far as making the current system last, I believe we can. We may need some spare parts. The system's old and rather beat up, but it's still functional. If we plan ahead and we have the spare parts on the line, there's no reason in the future when we do have the extra money for the septic screen that we can't order it, have it delivered and ready to go before we take the old system offline. So I don't anticipate a loss of revenue.
So is there any concern at this point about additional costs having basically be duplicated since we're doing all the construction and tearing everything up at this point, that when you go to replace everything associated with septic receiving, including the new fee, ability to collect fees and all that type of thing, would add additional costs that would be duplicated?
I don't see any duplication of cost other than the spare parts that we buy.
Okay.
You know, you don't have a crystal ball. If it doesn't break, you don't need to fix it. But if it does break, we should have the parts on hand to, you know, maintain the system so we don't lose any revenue.
So at this point, we don't have anything that's a major issue that could break so that we would be down for a significant period of time?
Never say never. I don't anticipate anything major happening to it. There's very few parts that wear out on the system. The one part that does wear out is the auger, which I will probably be coming to council for permission to buy a new one for the existing system. Even if we proceeded with buying a new system now, it would still be almost a year before we got it. So we should have these spare parts on the shelf in case of a failure.
And then the idea of dollar amount associated with that?
When I checked last spring, it was about $18,000.
Okay, and because we're using $2 million out of savings to pay for this
Right,
cost
but
now, so.
the digester repairs, the only possible reason to cut off the septage for any length of time would be the digester being down, which is what's going to happen this coming year for the repairs, or the screen breaking. Again, if we have everything ready, we're not changing the building, we're not changing the electrical, we're not changing the plumbing, we'd simply be swapping out a new screen for the existing one.
So the benefit of having it done all at the same time right now, there won't be a additional cost and that type of thing. So you're basically confident that we can move forward?
Might be a better question for Brian as far as cost goes.
I think it's nominal. If there would be any additional cost, it would be small.
But in terms of if we were to do financing in the near future to handle this $325,000, is it part of a whole new resubmission and another grant request, or could it fall underneath this?
It would fall into this one.
Yeah, it's part of the project plan. So you would have the ability to borrow loans to cover that project should you.
And there's no time period within the time that we have to do this?
The project plan will stay current for about 5 years. So if you get outside of that 5-year horizon, they would probably ask you to resubmit the plan.
So the only jeopardy we would have is if loans money wasn't available from the state to be loaned out, that would be the only concern at that point. Because I'm reading in here, it says if funds are available.
It's a competitive process. There will be dozens, if not hundreds, of communities across the state that apply for the loans, and there's only so many dollars per year, so you get ranked, and it depends on where you are ranked in the list if you are even eligible for a given year.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that that separate issue by itself would not probably rank because it generates revenue on itself and is a type of a service, where if you put it all together as one package, they might see it as a better ranking.
My personal opinion is that would not matter in the ranking, just knowing their formula, so.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome.
Do you have additional thoughts, Mr. Gearbaugh?
Nope.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Rhodes?
Minor item, but I just wanted to point out that the zip code given for the Saline Public Library is in error. It should be 48176.
Thank you.
Should have been 8 wrong instead of a 7.
Yep.
Okay. Mr. Burgoyne?
I have 2 questions. If you do get the revolving funds, the loan funds, we would be eligible for the entire package of $4 million or so. Is that right? And then we would do the first project now, and we could continue doing another project in year 2 or year 3. Is that correct?
You've described it properly. You are proposing as part of the project plan the smaller package in the near term, the next year, and then the other projects we would apply in increments as you so desired. Correct.
Okay.
Go ahead with your additional question, Mr. Burgoyne.
My additional question is on upgrading the digester system. What's the useful life?
Tom, you might know that.
I think the intent of most projects like that, like this, including this one, is that mechanical components have an expected life which is approaching 20 years. Structural components would be much longer than that. This is mostly mechanical kinds of components, so 20 years is a reasonable expectation.
Okay, and so I have a comment with that. My comment is that I would like us to use the low-cost revolving funds if we can get them. First, because the funds that we have set aside for safety now, we don't have $4 million of it, so we don't have a full source for the projects. And secondly, I think those funds were originally required in 1987 at 201 federal grant program. I can't remember exactly what it was, but The idea was that if you have 15 million or 20 million worth of assets, you should have 10% or some percent of that as a safety fund in there, because something could go wrong. So I do very much appreciate that you are applying for low-cost funds on this.
Additional comments or questions? Thank you, gentlemen. Then we'll proceed to vote. It's been moved by Mr. Burgoyne, seconded by Mr. Peters to confirm the acceptance. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. Moving on to public hearing item 13-97, application for IFT, Saline Electronics Incorporated. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the May 28, 2013 memo from Kathy Korfman, Administrative Finance Assistant, regarding recommendation of IFT application from Saline Electronics Incorporated and file. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Rhodes
Second.
to acknowledge receipt, seconded by Mr. Peters. Ms. Korfman, would you care to make a statement?
Saline Electronics designs, assembles, and tests printed circuit boards for a variety of industry sectors, including but not limited to aerospace, alternative energy, and medical. Due to an increased demand, a shift is being added and new equipment is required. It's estimated 30 additional employees will be hired. Saline Electronics is requesting an IFT abatement for the purchase of over $1.4 million of equipment. The Special Projects Commission met May 14th to review the application, and the Commission is recommending that Saline Electronics be given a 7-year tax abatement. In addition, the Special Projects Commission voted to award Saline Electronics an additional 50 special merit points to recognize that the company qualifies as a high technology firm because they work with technology that assists with alternative energy sources. Awarding these bonus points did not change the number of years that the IFT abatement qualified for. However, the Commission felt that they should still be given the points for their high-tech work.
Thank you, Ms. Korfman. Are there questions for staff? No? Okay, then it's been properly moved and seconded to acknowledge receipt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. Next, we need a motion to open the public hearing, affording the applicant, general public, and taxing units an opportunity to be heard. Is there a motion?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Gearbaugh to open the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Tahar. Do we have a representative from Saline Electronics with us this evening? Yes, would you like to come forward and make a comment?
Yes.
Appreciate you being here.
My pleasure. Good evening. My name is Tim McLean. I'm the controller of Saline Electronics. I actually submitted the application for the IFT, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have about it. We're hoping that you can approve the recommendation of the Special Projects Commission. I'm not sure how the effect of my request to postpone the decision based on the pending legislation in Lansing affects this hearing, but I'm here to answer any questions.
It doesn't actually affect the hearing. Obviously, if council members have questions for you, we'll entertain those. And then, of course, the general public and additional taxing units will have an opportunity to comment. But the motion as it is, as it's presented this evening, is to postpone in accordance with that discussion that we had at Special Projects Commission.
Right,
And then it will
right.
be reconsidered, of course, at a later date.
Excellent.
But we do greatly appreciate your continued investment in the community, and I wish you best of luck in your future expansion.
Thank you very much.
Do any members of council have comments or questions for the applicant? No? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for your consideration.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak during this public comment period?
Move to close.
It's been moved by Gearbaugh to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Tahar. Hearing no discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. This public hearing is now closed. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the May 22nd, 2013 email from Saline Electronics Incorporated requesting that the city delay action on their application for an industrial facilities tax exemption, to postpone consideration of the application from Saline Electronics Incorporated for an industrial facilities tax exemption in the amount of $1,429,121 for personal property until clarifying legislation is enacted or August 5th, 2013, whichever is first.
Move to postpone.
Okay, it's been moved by Gearbaugh to postpone, seconded by Mr. Roth. Do you want to make a quick comment, Mr. Campbell, just one more time? This is now sort of a format we're following. As you recall, we had an IFT request from McNaughton and Gunn, which we also postponed, but I just want to have staff provide an opportunity on this additional occasion to clarify why we're doing that.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Mayor Morrow alluded, this City Council did something similar for the recent McNaughton and Gunn IFT request, and it all kind of revolves around Council back earlier this year had some concerns because of the new elimination of the personal property tax and how that may or may not impact the city and our tax revenues. And so while they're still working on cleanup legislation in Lansing these last several months, which, as you'll recall, our city attorney Scott Smith is part of that team, thought it was prudent to push this off because there may be benefits to even the applicant that may come from this cleanup language and or the city. So we thought it would be prudent to delay it as reasonably possible, which you all may recall as well. The magic date for IFTs is October 31st. They need to be submitted to Treasury by October 31st. Otherwise, that IFT will not be applied towards the next tax year for that company. They would have to wait for another year. This was staff's recommendation with McNaughton and Gunn, and as well as this one and any future ones that may come before us in the near future, is to try and just to see where that clarifying legislation is going to come out, which they're still working on, but at the same time have an end date that whether they have it or not, the language or not, that the council would move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Any discussion? No, that's been properly moved and seconded to postpone. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries. Moving on to public hearing, item 12-178. This is General Appropriation Act for fiscal year 14. The first motion will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the May 28th, 2013 memo from Deputy Treasurer McDonough regarding the General Appropriation Act for fiscal year 2014. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Rhodes.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Burgoyne. Actually, I'm going to invite both our Deputy Treasurer and City Treasurer forward. If you'd both like to make a comment at this time, we would welcome that. And then if council members have questions, we'll entertain those questions.
Thank you. First, I just wanted to thank you guys for all of your effort in putting forth this budget and getting the numbers together. This binder kind of represents the work that you've been submitted, and we've been working on work sessions since early April. During that time, if I can just briefly go over the process that we did and maybe address any concerns that have been brought up during the last couple of weeks. During the time we present the budget, we also disclosed and showed a whole analysis of how the city funds and the city is set up as a financial and whole. At that time, we presented every council person a chart and a copy of fund balances for all the supporting funds, and we went through and described what those supporting funds were, what type of funds they were, and we also demonstrated what the balance of those funds, what the reserves in those funds were made of. We also discussed how the city general fund supports directly the solid waste, the street debt, and the fire department. And at that time, we analyzed those fund balances and determined at this point that instead of funding those in full, as we have in the past, that we could appropriately use some of the reserves in those funds to offset the need from the general fund. An exception to that was made at the April 15th work session when we discussed the rec center. The rec center fund balance exceeds that of the general fund. However, we also know that we have some pending mechanical equipment failures out there. Our Dectron unit that we have just recently paid off or will be paying off has been reported faulty and has been suggested that we repair or replace the Dectron unit. And more recently, our boiler has been causing some problems and a replacement boiler is also in needs. At the April 15th work session, we discussed not using those fund reserves instead and contributing a full amount to the general fund, from the general fund to the rec center for support. Another one fund that we discussed contributing full amount to was the rec bond fund. The rec bond fund is solely supported by grants or the general fund and currently has a fund balance that would cover 1.71 years of the 12-year debt obligation existing on that. Over the past 6 years, the City Council has directed the city staff that during the time of declining revenues from both property taxes and state revenue that we make cuts and reductions, including reductions in workforce, reductions in the cost to the employees, not only the employee benefits, but also employee cuts, and more importantly, cuts to our capital improvements and our capital infrastructure budget. The original budget that the department head submitted included equipment for, or dollar amounts for 2 new cars for our police department, as well as a $220,000 plow truck. And during our original talks with our department heads, we weeded out the 2 patrol cars and left the $220,000 in the budget. Our Department of Public Works Supervisor, Mr. Fordyce, then said, well, if we can keep the 220, maybe we can creatively repair that snowplow truck, leave some of the money in the, which would, he could put a replacement on there for, I think he said $95,000. I have this broke out somewhere on this, but.
For just smaller equipment like lawnmowers and landscaping type equipment that they keep just repairing instead of replacing. So there's been equipment that has been delayed in purchasing or replacing because of the budget cuts.
Right.
So he took his $220,000 and reworked it so that the police department can get one of the police vehicles that they need, and we would retrofit the snowplow for, instead of $160,000, it would be like a $95,000 cost, and then he wanted to leave a contingency about $90,000. So he still kept his $220,000, but it also includes the police vehicle that we had originally taken out.
And leaving some money available for reactive replacement for older equipment to our continuing aging fleet. The council has worked very hard. The information has been provided to the city council demonstrating the property taxes and the declining. We've also reviewed our LDFA 2 obligation met with our city attorneys to discuss the existing loan that the general fund fronted the LDFA 2 and the development of the industrial park. It is a time that the fund balance allows for that money to come back into the general fund from LDFA, and those payments are included in the budget that or the appropriations that you're approving tonight. However, after reviewing all of the, as just recently alluded to, the personal property legislation and the uncertainty of how that is going to impact all of our TIF captures, including our TIFA and our LDFAs, the council discussed and I believe decided that that would be better to reserve that money until such time that we know what the personal property legislation, how that's going to eventually come out of Lansing, and the impact of the August 2014 election, when it could just totally go right back to the drawing board. So at that point, that money has come back into the general fund, but we are reserving that fund balance. I hope that that information is helpful and not too cumbersome. And if there's any additional questions, we'll be happy to address them.
Thank you, ladies. Are there additional questions for Ms. McDonough or Ms. Bennett? Mr. Burgoyne, question.
Not a question, but I have a comment afterwards.
Okay, well, let's reserve our comments to the final motion there, where we can discuss the merits of this proposal. There are no questions for these ladies. Thank you. Appreciate your work on this. The next motion would be to open the public hearing.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Burgoyne.
There is no other place for discussion, and I do want to continue on this topic here, the presentation of the information.
Well, if you insist on making a comment, you are welcome to do so at this time then.
Okay. I'm going to pass my comment is also written. I have a comment on 4 items. The first item is $90,000 that has been, it's an assigned amount of $90,000 that's within the capital expenditure. That really should be an assigned item in the fund balance. By definition, amounts that are intended to be used like this as a contingency for equipment or whatever purpose for which you don't have a specific item of expenditure, something that could break down, replace an engine later on, a backhoe that could break down, some major equipment, that actually belongs in assigned fund balance. And I think it should, I would like to get the support of the council to put it in the right place. It's in the same budget, but in the line where it really belongs. It belongs there by Department of Treasury directive. It belongs there under Gatsby 54 as an assigned balance for DPW equipment. So instead of being up where you actually have expenditures for certain particular things, when you have something directed like this, it really should be an assigned fund balance. Staff would put that there properly if the council agreed to that. So I'm asking for the council to agree to just do it where it should be.
Do you have any other comments, Mr. Burgoyne?
Yes, I also think that the $61,000 of debt payment that for which we had been sending $61,000 a year to the rec center to cover that loss is no longer a loss next year because that debt payment has ended. And I don't think that should be sent to the rec center. Third item I have is under rec bonds, we have some $220,000 or so under rec bonds. I'm requesting that we follow our own policy, and our policy is if you have something restricted for a certain purpose, that you consider that first. So out of the 220 and 11 years of debt service that are coming up, I'm requesting that $20,000 a year be used, a proportional amount. And in the LDFA2, my fourth item is, in the LDFA2, we have never before this year put aside $50,000 for a bond reserve. And it's not, there's only a risk to leaving the money in the LDFA, and there's no risk if the money is moved to the general fund and put aside in the general fund. So I would request that that $50,000 not be put up there as a new item in LDFA 2. Some of these items actually could be done through amendments in the first amended budget after July 1. But the one that I think should be done now is that $90,000. It's just in the wrong line. It's up above, and it should be down below at the end. And it should just say assigned for equipment or assigned for DPW equipment.
Thank you, Mr. Burgoyne. Are there additional comments? No? Then there's a motion on the floor to acknowledge receipt of the May 28th, 2013 memo. It's been properly moved by Rhodes, seconded by Burgoyne. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries. Now we need a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Gearboss, seconded by Mr. Roth. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Public hearing is now open. Anyone who would like to speak is requested and welcome to come forward.
Move to close.
It's been moved by Mr. Gearboss to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Tahar. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Public hearing is now closed. The fourth and final motion will be a motion to approve and adopt or not to adopt the resolution as submitted adopting the General Appropriations Act budget for fiscal year 2013-14, providing for a general operating millage of 14.2118 mils, including the funding required for fire protection, the 2001 street debt millage of 0.1166 mils, the 2004 street debt millage of 0.4040 mils, and a refuge millage of 1.5476 mils, for a total millage levy of 16.8 mils, which is a .75 mil increase over fiscal year 2012-2013. Is there a motion?
So move.
Move to
Approve and adopt.
Okay, it's been moved by Roth to approve and adopt. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Tahar. Is there discussion? No discussion? Well, then I'll make a comment. As staff had indicated, this was a long time coming, and this is a budget that is truly balanced, a budget that our city appointed officials and our city's elected officials invested a significant amount of time in discussing and debating and therefore rendering. And it has been said, and it certainly is true, that tonight, as we adopt this budget and adjust our millage rate, that our citizens, the people that we serve, the people that we represent, are watching. And you know, I think sometimes we don't give the people of this city enough credit. They're smart, and they get it. And they won't tolerate one-time fixes and gimmicks. They see past rhetoric, and they don't buy into the demagoguery. And like me, they know that the path of least resistance is always downhill. Again, this is a truly balanced budget. It exhausts our structural deficit and will allow us to put a little bit of money into our rainy day fund. Just the first time we've done that during my tenure on council. I also want to give the citizens a little bit of perspective. I was elected to council in 2008, began serving in 2009, and I have participated and supported 4 all-cuts budgets. Budgets that in 2009 eliminated 4 full-time positions. Those employees received pink slips. Those budgets eliminated 2 positions by attrition at DPW. It eliminated the police department's position. It consolidated the Treasurer's Department and Finance Department. It has now twice asked for all employees to endure a wage freeze. It's instituted a hard cap on health insurance premiums. That's in addition to copays and deductibles. And we're now asking for all employees who receive a guaranteed pension to contribute between 2% and 5% of that cost annually. We've deferred many capital projects and other expenditures. So we've done what we can to rectify our financial situation without a tax increase. But the reality is that at this critical juncture, I believe it was absolutely necessary. Now, I want to give you all a little bit more context. This .75 mil increase for the average taxing unit is about $65 additional a year. So you break that down, that's $5.50 a month. That's $1 and some odd change a week. That's less than 20 cents a day. I'm willing to forego 20 cents a day to keep the city that I love, the city that I'm passionate about, out of fiscal insolvency. I'm willing to forego 20 some odd cents a day, or less than 20 some odd cents a day, to maintain a healthy fund balance. I'm willing to forego that so that we can continue to invest in our roads and infrastructures and keep at least 2 police officers on every shift. I'm willing to forego that, and I think once that narrative is articulated to the people that we serve, they're going to be willing to forego that too. One last point I want to make, and then I'll yield the floor, which is, and I said this before at a couple work meetings and I think at a regular meeting, I am not your proverbial political wilting flower. I intend to get out and market this and sell this to anybody who will have me. I've already presented to the Chamber of Commerce twice, presented to the Saline Area Senior Center about this, and to CQC. And as promised, we're going to have town halls and we're going to engage with the people that we serve because we owe you nothing less. So with that, I will yield the floor, but I strongly encourage my colleagues to endorse and vote in favor of the motion that's before you. Thank you. There are additional comments. Ms. Tahar.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support all of the points that you've made. I'm in complete support of this budget and the increase in the millage rate. The city, over the last 5 years, has done, the staff and council have done a superb job of cutting and cutting and cutting. But we have, I think, gone beyond the point where any more cutting is possible, and I'm very pleased that this budget will help us start to turn the corner. I want to talk a little bit about the fund balance, the unassigned fund balance. 5 years ago, the city had an extremely healthy fund balance, and the past 5 years have looking at the data from the past 5 years, makes for me a very compelling case for the importance of building the fund balance back up again. I think if I understand the history correctly, the fund balance was originally built up because there were fears about what was going to happen with Vistion and that a major taxpayer in the city was going to fold. As it happened, that didn't turn out, but that didn't happen. But the fund balance had been built up, and a completely, as far as I was concerned, unanticipated crisis occurred in the economic downturn that we experienced starting in 2007, 2008. And that fund balance that was originally put in place for the Vistion possibility made it possible for the city to make the very painful cuts that were made in a less crisis mode and less drastic manner that might have happened if that healthy fund balance weren't there to draw on. So I think we have compelling reason to not only support operations, but immediate operations with this millage increase, but also just to start turning the corner and building the fund balance back up to a reasonable portion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tahar. Are there additional comments? Mr. Gearbaugh.
This year's approach, I think, has been one that we've been looking at. Do you raise taxes to try and provide for additional funds to do other projects and things? We're not really doing that. We're trying to keep ourselves afloat, not so much from a perspective of we want to build a whole lot of fund balances, but the idea is that we as a city need to move forward, and we need to make sure that we have the staff here and the services that continue that everyone expects. If we were to do additional cuts, like we talked about, certain things like dispatch or any other items, we've had feedback from the citizens that said they don't want to see that happen. We are working with the schools, we're working with other entities to see how we can collaborate and reduce costs further, or even to prevent other increases that we don't need to see at this time. My concerns have been, and what at issue, we are in a recovery mode somewhat, but certain things and factors still keep coming up that we can't basically plan for. Forcia is looking at another tax appeal. We're seeing other additional impacts that potentially could be an issue with a possible slowdown. Europe is having issues. The manufacturing output is at the lowest since June 2009. We've got other things. We would hope that we can see additional homes being built, but we learned tonight that Torwood is filled out. We have at least a year to 2 years before any kind of projects, if they are annexed into the city or anything, would occur. We have other issues. The sequestering, we don't know where that's going to end. There's other aspects of a growing and booming stock market, but that could have a correction come forward. We have issues with the feds that are being addressed. There's just so many unknown concerns, and the state of Michigan has not gotten back to where it needs to be, and we don't know what's going to happen with personal property taxes. I may be a little bit more of a conservative individual when I look at all these items, and maybe I'm being pessimistic. I would like to be the other side, but I think we're seeing a lot of items that we just don't have enough knowns, and a 0.75 is not a huge increase. It's only $66 a year. I have 4 properties. I'm going to be paying 4 times that. I'm looking at my father, who is a senior citizen that had to take the impact from what happened at the state level from the changes in the tax approaches that the governor put in place to screw everyone, I shouldn't say it that way, to, my problem, to basically shift the load onto other citizens. So we are experiencing the approach that we're having to now basically foot the bill. So from my perspective, I agree that there are things that I think are coming. We're hoping that we can sell property. But there are other aspects are, I don't want to see us having to continue to repair things or make a guesstimate that, yes, this is going to last another year. I just tried to fix a 30-year-old rototiller trying to find parts for that. I'm not one of these ones that just say we're going to buy a new one every year. But at some point, you have to admit, and we have to move ahead. So that's my concern this year, and that's why I'm pushing this forward.
Additional comments? I just want to elaborate on one point that Mr. Gearbaugh touched on that I think is very important. And I think, and I believe, excuse me, that the vast majority, if not there'd be unanimous consent from council that this tax adjustment, and that's really what it is not a magic bullet. It is part of an all-of-the-above approach that we are implementing, which includes, as Mr. Gearbaugh indicated, collaborating with other entities to see if there's ways to save cost and to partner and improve efficiencies. Aggressively, for the first time in our history, aggressively marketing all of this city-owned vacant land to transition it from public ownership to private ownership and see jobs created and see these parcels added to our tax rolls. Pursuing annexation agreements with any developer who comes forward with a common-sense plan for developing an industrial, commercial, or residential property. So this adjustment is just one of an all-of-the-above approach that we're implementing here at City Hall to try and rectify our financial situation. So let us not, we don't want to confuse anybody. I want to be very clear that, again, this is just one component of a plan we're putting in place to improve our financial situation. Okay? If there's no further discussion?
Yes.
Oh, excuse me, Mr. Roth, I apologize.
I just want to clarify my understanding for the general public. This millage rate that we're setting now is only good for 1 year, and every year we revisit it.
Correct.
So there is a chance that it can go down if there's a miracle change in our economy.
Absolutely. The budget and the millage rate are reviewed, discussed, and approved every year.
Thank you.
Yep. If there are no further comments, then the motion's on the floor by Ross, seconded by Tahar, to approve and adopt. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
The ayes have it, and the motion carries. We move on to unfinished business, item 13-96. This was removed from the consent agenda. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the FY14 strategic plan and to approve and adopt the plan as submitted. Is there a motion?
I would move to acknowledge receipt of the plan. I'd like to discuss it.
Okay, it's been moved by Rhodes to acknowledge receipt. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Gearbaugh. Mr. Rhodes, you may go ahead.
Thank you. The reason for my request to discuss this is it occurred to me that under the enhanced quality of life section of the strategic plan, the key performance indicator only addresses sales. And with the potential development of the old DPW site and the request that I think is going to come to us from Maplewood Heights, both of those units have to deal with rentals, apartment rentals. And we may have erred when we just keyed in on residential sales for the encouragement of affordable entry-level housing, because we certainly need to have rentals that are available for entry-level housing also that's affordable. And I'd like for us to consider adding a statement, and it doesn't need to be done tonight, but shortly hereafter, a statement that regards occupancy rates for rentals as a key performance indicator.
Would the rest of council be amenable to staff working on language and submitting it in a future draft?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Gearba?
How- whatever.
Mr.
Yes.
Har? Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Peters?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Burgoyne? Okay. Okay.
Oh, I see.
Mr. Rhodes, do you have anything else?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other comments related to this document? Then my suggestion would be that we acknowledge receipt and that staff work on some additional language and maybe submit it on the 17th for review and approval. Sounds good? Okay. All right, then there's a motion on the floor by Mr. Rhodes, seconded by Mr. Gearbock to acknowledge receipt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries. Next, we move on to new business, item 13-98, Eagle Scout Project, Garden at Teff Park. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the May 28th, 2013 memo from Parks and Rec Director Scruggs regarding the Eagle Scout Project at Teff Park, and to approve the request of Robbie M. Orr to refurbish the garden on the east side of the Recreation Center into a tired garden to make it beautiful, weed-free, and easy to maintain. Did I get that right?
Tiered.
Tiered, excuse me.
Tiered.
Okay. Okay. Not tired. We don't want it to be tired,
We're all
excuse me.
tired.
Appreciate your patience this evening. I will get out of your way, and the floor is yours.
I just wanted to introduce Robbie. I've worked with his brother, actually, did his Eagle Scout project for us 2 years ago, and he has been very persistent, offering a couple of different projects for us, and I think this one is the keeper. So I'd like to turn it over to Robbie and let him present it.
Thank you. So, hello, I'm Robbie Amore, and I'm from Troop 429, and I am here to give you the proposal for my Eagle project. So, what is the Eagle project? If you might not know, let's just say. It is a project that a candidate for the position of an Eagle Scout. It demonstrates their leadership skills. The project that they do is made for the improvement of the community, and it is able to be used by any group or organization. And it is not allowed to be a fundraiser. What do I want my Eagle project to be? I would like it to be landscaping the sloped garden that is in the back of the rec center by the tennis courts. And here I have a Google Maps, I guess, of the rec center. And the garden I'm talking about is right back here. So if here are the volleyball courts, and here's the pavilion. It's back here. And that's the garden. Here's some more pictures of it, just to maybe get a feel for it. So what I plan to do is I plan to tier or terrace the garden, and that would help keep all the dirt and mulch remaining in the garden, and then all the plants will be, or all the flowers, I should say, will be on level ground instead of on a slope, and then it'll keep the water and mud inside the garden after it rains, and so it will not all flood off onto the sidewalk. It'll add retaining walls, and that'll add structure and interest to the garden. I'll put landscaping fabric behind the walls, so mud would not be able to flow through the pavers that make the retaining walls. I will put in cement stepping stones for the hose connector. There is a hose connector in the middle of the garden up on the wall, and so I'd have the circular the stepping stones for easy access to the hose connector. Then finally, I would replant the garden. I would use plants that were there before, and I would transplant plants from maybe other areas of the rec center, and then I might purchase anything that would be needed. So here are some examples of what I would do with the terracing, or the terracing. Here is it would be made of pavers, so it would be made like this and have the curve to it. And then the whole garden itself would just kind of have the multiple layers. I plan to have three levels total, and it would just all go across and have the curve and be made of pavers like these. And then on the stones, there'll be a capstone put on top. They'll have a outdoor adhesive used to keep it on, and that'll be there so nobody would be able to steal any of the pavers that construct it, and they would just be placed on top like this with the adhesive. How would the improved garden benefit the community? It would beautify the back of the rec center, so anyone that is back there would be able to enjoy the beauty. It's very easy to maintain. My troop, they already maintain the rest of the gardens around the rec center, and so after this project, it would be given to them to also take care of. And then it might also promote more business for the rec center. So how much will it cost? It actually will not cost that much. The paver stones I can get donated by Fent. Mulch, we will use the mulch that the rec center already has. For the flowers, maybe $200 at the max. It depends on how many flowers we can use that for transplanting. The base materials are the limestone. Those are used for when you put the retaining walls in. You first have a layer of slag sand, and then you have a layer of crushed limestone, and then they are compacted together, and then that is the foundation for the pavers. And then those I can hopefully get donated. One of the people on the Parks and Rec Commission have someone that I can talk to hopefully get those donated. And then the compactor I can get donated from Fent as well for the use of my project. Then the timeline, I would hopefully like to do this in the end of June. On the 28th, the first day that I would do this, I would remove all of the plants, and we would prune the trees. There are 2 trees, if I didn't mention in the garden. We would prune the trees and then mark off where we would put the tiers. And then on the next day, on the 29th, we would excavate the area from the back, and then we would make the foundation for the first tier, and then we would finish making the one in the back, the retaining wall, and then we would also start the middle tier, and then we would on the 3rd day we would finish the middle tier if we need to. We would complete the first tier on the floor, and then level all the dirt and plant flowers. And that is my PowerPoint. So, do you have any questions?
Very good. Are there any questions? Mr. Peters?
Just to say that I walked around yesterday, I think you picked a great spot for your project.
Oh, thank you.
It's not only going to look good, but it's going to keep the sidewalk cleaner. So thanks for doing that.
Any other additional comments, questions for Robbie? Appreciate it. Very thorough presentation. Appreciate your patience tonight. I'm assuming this is your mom with you, so we appreciate you being here as well. It's great that she's here supporting you. And Ms. Scruggs, thank you as well. So do we call a motion? I did not get a motion on this.
I'll move to approve.
Okay. So it's been moved by Peters to approve, and it's been seconded by Mr. Burgoyne. I should have asked for a mover and a seconder earlier. I apologize. Any discussion? No? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank
Look
you.
forward to seeing this project completed.
Good luck.
Okay, we move on now to new business item 13-99. This is the 2013 Saline Summerfest and 5K Run. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the letter from Art Trapp and the application for community event / use of public ways for the Saline Summerfest, to acknowledge the receipt of the May 29th, 2013 email from Police Chief Rennick, the May 29th, 2000 email from Fire Chief Heft, and the May 30th, 2013 memo from DPW Director Fordyce, and to approve or not to approve the 2013 Saline Summerfest event in downtown on August 9th and 10th, 2013, utilizing city parking lots number 1 and 4, with the relocation of the farmers market to parking lot 2 on August 10th, as well as using and/or closing the public ways as described in Exhibit B, to approve or not to approve the beer and wine tent to be located in parking lot 4 with licensing by the Saline, Michigan Picnic in the Park, with the set approvals for the event subject to the following. 1, that the traffic engineer issued the required temporary traffic control orders for street closings. 2, that the required permit to close the left turn lanes on US 12 at Ann Arbor Street be obtained through MDOT. 3, that a certificate of liability insurance and liquor liability insurance be provided by the Saline, Michigan Picnic in the Park with the city as an endorsed additional insured party, and that all fees, for city services for the event above normal time, estimated at $2,590.80, be waived. Is there a motion?
I will move to approve and approve.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Peters to approve and approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Burgoyne. Mr. Trapp or Mr. Hill, do you care to make a comment?
As always, Saline Summerfest is a combination of many of the groups in Saline, starting with the city, the Chamber of Commerce, the Rotary, a number of the churches, and a number of the other groups at large, like the Lions Club and the Kiwanis. And it's our effort to bring forth an event that brings the entire community together. It used to be something that was done to bring the kids back together and the families back together again before school started in late August. But since the change in the law that school starts after Labor Day, we still have kept the tradition going for having this event the first week in August. This year we have a few new things, and we've eliminated a few of the things that we've had in the past. And right now we have two very good bands for our 8 o'clock hour. 56 Days is the band that we've had a number of times, and they are very popular. And also Phoenix Theory will be on Saturday night. We will fill in the rest of the music from 11 o'clock until about 8 o'clock with local bands in the area, and that gives them an opportunity to display their talents. Food this year is similar to what we've had in the past, and we have a group of about 60 volunteers that are ready to help us out put this all together.
Thank you, Mr. Trapp. Are there any questions? No? Thank you, sir. Appreciate your work on this. Are there additional comments? No? Okay. This is a fabulous event, and we look forward to it. And again, we appreciate you two gentlemen being here this evening and your leadership, and of course all the volunteers who help make Summerfest an amazing event. So thank you very much. It's been properly moved by Peters, seconded by Burgoyne to approve and approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. Moving on to Item 13-100. This is resolution supporting House Bill 4743. This will be a motion to approve and adopt or not adopt the resolution as submitted supporting House Bill 4743, Fireworks Safety Act Amendment. Is there a motion?
Move to approve and adopt.
It's been moved by Gearbaugh. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Rhodes. Real quick. So you should have all received an email from me, I think on Tuesday of last week, regarding the fact that this bill passed the Michigan House of Representatives, I think 109-1. This would be amendment to offered by Representative Howe of Roseville. He's the author of the original Fireworks Act, and this would amend and rectify an issue that many of us have been concerned about. As our citizens know, and as all of you at the dais know, the existing statute permits the use of basically commercial-grade fireworks for 30 days during the calendar year, 10 holidays, and then the day before and the day immediately following those holidays. And essentially, individuals can utilize those fireworks at all hours of the day. The city of Saline last year put a moratorium on fireworks on every day of the calendar year with the exception of those 30, which we are not able to regulate by statute. However, this amendment, 4743, would allow municipalities to regulate the use of fireworks between midnight and 8 a.m. So Mr. Rhodes made the suggestion that we draft a resolution. There was a really fast turnaround on this in order to get it in your packet, and I applaud Ms. Rutledge for assisting me, and actually not assisting, you did all the work. You wrote the resolution, so thank you for that. And we offer it now for your consideration. The Michigan Senate is in session this week and most likely next. Again, most likely next. The state budget is basically finalized, so they will be breaking for summer recess very shortly. So it's my hope that this bill is brought up in the state Senate and voted upon. If it is, I suspect that it would go to the governor's desk and it would be signed. Again, it passed overwhelmingly in the House, I think 109, 108-1. And then if that happens, then we would immediately act on banning the use of fireworks between midnight and 8 a.m. on those 30 days. I should also note for our citizens, we are going to be including an article in the upcoming FYI newsletter about the fireworks that are now permitted under statute, when you can use them, and when those 30 days are. So I think you'll find that helpful. Is there any discussion or comments? No? Okay, then it's been properly moved by Gearboss, seconded by Rhodes to approve and adopt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries. Moving on to item 13-101, this is downtown improvements, Saline Main Street. This is two motions, the first of which is to acknowledge receipt of the May 29th, 2013 correspondence from Rebecca Schneider on behalf of Saline Main Street regarding downtown improvements. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Rhodes to acknowledge receipt. Mr. Har, I'll let you be the second. Ms. Schneider, would you care to comment at all? Yes, and Ms. Jupko, you're welcome to join her.
There we go. I'll have to set that up there so I don't disrupt this. No, that's okay. Mayor Marl and City Council, I'm happy to be here again before you. We have a couple of improvements we'd like to make to downtown with your blessing, and they are included in the memo. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have about them. I did want to clarify on the drawing of the arch, the bids that we're having, putting out are just for the arch structure itself. The planters on the sides would be added later, or it's just a concept really. We could have planters that go on the ground too. So keep that all in mind. I did want to, while I'm standing before you, because I also do the Be Bloomin' program, I did want to thank all of you for your support for that program. So many of you are sponsors, and I really do appreciate your generosity to this program. And I did want to let everyone know that sponsorships are still available. It's not too late, even though the flowers are up.
So if we were interested in sponsoring a flower pot or hanging basket, we would go and see Mr. Rosenberger at the Main Street office?
Yes, you can also do it online.
Okay.
Via the Saline Main Street website.
Very good. Thank you. Okay.
Are there any questions about the memo?
Mr. Roth.
I have a question about the structure. Is it freestanding, not attached to either building on the side?
That's right.
And how much gap is in between?
It's going to sit on the bollards that are currently in place.
Okay. Thank you.
Additional questions for Mrs. Schneider or Ms. Zupko? No? Thank you, ladies.
Any questions about the trash?
Yep, actually, we can take the trash one now as well. It's a good idea. It's pretty self-explanatory, but are there any questions? Mr. Har?
Yes, so, thank you. So the flowers for the tops will be also part of the Be Bloomin' initiative, or a separate thing?
This year, we would, if we can get our acts together and get it done, we would plant them ourselves. And in the future, we could have them be part of Be Bloomin'. We would ask Nature's Garden if they would be so kind as to throw some water on them 3 times a week when they're putting water on the other flowers.
There's 12 altogether, so won't be too bad.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Mr. Rhodes?
Not a question, just a comment. I'll be really, really happy to see those concrete trash bins painted something other than that nasty look that they are now. Thank you.
Someday in better times, maybe we'll work on getting new ones.
Mr. Gearbaugh?
As we're painting concrete, I happen to notice tonight, when will we be painting the yellow curves again? They look really bad too, so if we're going to have the downtown look a little more spruced up, I was wondering when that might happen.
The crosswalks need help too, I would add.
Crosswalks.
I don't know the last time we did the yellow curbing, but I know the crosswalks usually are done once a year or so.
Can you get back to us on that, Mr. Fordyce?
But I'd like to see that done.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Are there any additional questions for our guests? No? Thank you, ladies. Appreciate your patience this evening. Okay, so again, our first motion is to acknowledge receipt of the May 29th correspondence from Rebecca Schneider. That's been moved by Rhodes, seconded by Tahar. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The subsequent motion is to authorize or not authorize the downtown improvements to the trash receptacles and the alley arch designed and submitted by Saline Main Street. Is there a motion?
Move to authorize.
It's been moved by Tahar to authorize. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Peters. Discussion. No? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you, ladies. The last action item this evening is item 13-01 012. This is agreement with 123.net for use of city water towers. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the May 30th memo from City Manager Campbell regarding 12.net Incorporated agreement renewal, to authorize or not authorize a renewal agreement with 123.net Incorporated for wireless internet service with a rate of $3,780 per year per tower, with a 2% year-over-year increase and a 10-year term, and to authorize or not authorize the mayor and interim clerk to execute the agreement document with 123.net Incorporated after review and approval of the city attorney.
I'll move to acknowledge receipt of the May 30th, 2013 memo at that point.
Okay. So can we take it to, Gearbaugh will move to acknowledge receipt of the May 30th, 2000?
From Campbell, sorry, my clarification.
To City Manager Campbell?
Yep.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
Support.
Support by Mr. Rhodes. I'm going to turn it over to City Manager Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Dominic Serra is here in the audience, and I'm sure he'll be addressing you all as well from 123.net. Some of you may recall, I think it's been 2 years ago already, 2+ years ago, 123.net, they came in and they purchased the former wireless Washtenaw 2020 system, and so you can certainly fill in any of the detail gaps. But so we entered into an agreement with 123.net to have their equipment on both of the water towers on Henry Street as well as Industrial. And so we said, you know, let's to begin with, we'll keep it the same rate until we get into this the next one, and the next agreement. It's been a 2-year agreement, and then we can go from there. So it did expired in January, and we've been working with Dominic, and so trying to move this forward. And as you can see from my comments, and we've had nothing we haven't discussed with Dominic, you know, staff consists of myself, Treasurer Bennett, and City Attorney Smith, had been just in discussions with 123.net, and per the review that we did around the state, as the information attached provides, we believe that the rental rate should be significantly higher. You also have information from Mr. Serra as well, suggesting yes, it should be higher, but not a lot higher, and he, of course, he has a justification, and so we were going back and forth. So eventually, we just said, you know what, if this is your best deal, we'll push it forward to council and see if what council wants to do. As I said, you know, staff is our position is that we believe it should be significantly higher. I think it should be higher than what they're proposing, but that said, this is where we're at, and I'm happy to answer any questions or have Mr. Serra.
Let's start with questions for the city manager. Mr. Burgoyne, do you have a question for City Manager Campbell? Please.
Well, if we believe that we should do some deal and we don't believe it's quite where we would like it as a city, why are we doing it for 10 years? Why can't we do a deal for maybe 3 years and think again on it, you know, reasonably soon? So that's my question.
Yeah, well, and my question is that no reason you couldn't. I mean, they proposed 10 years. I would actually say at minimum or maximum, maybe, you know, we do have agreements with 5-year terms with additional 5-year terms. Mm-hmm. So 3 years, you know, I'm fine with, there's no magic number to 5. I think 10 is too many.
5 is typical, you know,
Sure.
for our business, actually.
Sure.
It is.
So 5 with repeating 5-year terms for consideration. Again, there's still, for either party could break the agreement during, you know, during one of those terms. But so 5 or 3, but certainly 10 I think is too long.
Mr. Rhodes.
Mr. Campbell, are there other wireless firms that could utilize the space currently taken up by 123 if this agreement is not approved?
We have not had any interest. We've not had anybody come and knock on our door and ask.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Mr. Gearbaugh, did you have a question for City Manager
No,
Campbell?
he answered my
Okay.
question. I was looking to see what competition we had out there and if we were to advertise it, what the potential would be to have responses.
Okay. Mr. Burgoyne, additional question for Mr. Campbell?
Well, a comment, I'd be okay with a 5-year non-renewable and then talk again as the 5-year gets close.
Okay. I'm going to turn it over to our guest, and maybe you can briefly present, and then we can have a discussion dialogue, or I can have organize and facilitate a discussion dialogue with my council colleagues. So please.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to thank everybody. It's good to be back, and being back here after 2 years kind of reminded me, just about the quality of leadership here in Saline. I just wanted to thank everybody for allowing us to use the towers the last couple of years. When we first took over the equipment on top of the towers, it was quite in a state of disarray, unfortunately. And I think in the last couple of years, we've actually been able to do some pretty exciting things with the towers. We are a smaller telecom, as compared to your AT&Ts and Verizons and Sprints, a very small Michigan-based company by comparison. We offer a service here that is extremely unique, not only to Saline, but also to be quite honest with you, nationwide. There's extremely few companies that sell or offer any sort of internet service to businesses over the air. And I think that especially is valuable to a place such as Saline, where unfortunately some of the more mainstream carriers that really tend to the businesses are not present, such as being with Frontier Phone Company area. We are also a phone company. We know what it costs just to buy a small circuit for a business, through them. So we offer an alternative service, and one of the kind of interesting scenarios was that when we got out here, we had a lot of small businesses, that were paying anywhere from $30 to $50 a month because they're literally, we were the carrier of last resort. So most of the business that we support off the towers are the smaller companies. There's been little growth in larger business that we do, like for example in other parts of the state, such as Detroit or Troy or Southfield. So we're happy to be here to support businesses, and we would like to continue to do that for the foreseeable future. There's one other thing I want to mention, and that is that I've open-endedly kind of thrown this out there. Since we have not had large growth out in this area, we do have a lot of excess capacity on our wireless network here because we built it to the standard of every area that we provide in. This is our smallest market in Saline. So we open-endedly want to say that if at any point the city would like us to provide a completely cost-free internet circuit of high capacity, we're willing to do that. And that does not pertain to this lease in any way, shape, or form. I believe the old lease did have some sort of provision in there, and regardless of that, that's a personal guarantee that I like to make. The connection I'm talking about, I actually spoke with Chris Schonk, who's back there, is essentially the kind of product that you'd pay a couple $1,000s a month for. We don't have a market for it out here. We have the capacity to support them. I'm talking about essentially 100 megabit dedicated internet connection would run out here $3,000, $4,000 a month to any single municipal zone or school, this building, wherever you'd like. So I just want to throw that out there as a courtesy. I like what's going on in the community. I'm from a small town myself, Romeo, so it's a lot of the similar type of setting. And it was just good to sit here today and kind of see what was going on. And, so I'd like to help out any way I can, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate your comments. Are there any questions for our applicant this evening? Mr. Gearbaugh.
In your letter that was dated, 4/23 to Todd, I think it was from you. You mentioned that there was 50 homes that have this and 50 businesses that continue to use your service.
Mm-hmm.
Are those within the city limits, or are they within, what is the range, I guess is what I'm asking
Absolutely.
also.
So in this area, we have very limited range due to the height. So to answer your question, yes. Virtually every customer that we have, there's actually a very few amount of customers. We do have a microwave that goes out to Manchester, which is a long distance thing that is actually for another, well, another provider out there. So we do some backhaul for smaller companies that provide internet in other rural areas, but the vast majority of our business is directly in the city of Saline proper. There's a very few, maybe 1 or 2 customers that are actually in Ann Arbor, that just happen to reach, but I would say about 90% of our businesses that we serve are in Saline off of the Saline Towers.
And any of the larger businesses that you provide services, can you give me some names? Out of curiosity?
I don't have a list handy, but I was driving here today and I noticed, I saw Sensors Incorporated. I know that's one that we do. We do the Ford dealership, the Briarwood Ford, both of their locations. We do, quite a few on State Street. That area. I can't think of, the names are escaping me at the moment. I could provide a list of all the ones we have. Saline Flower, a lot of the smaller ones like the Flowerland, several smaller like a restaurant, a coffee shop in the downtown. I can't think of the name.
Okay.
So it's a lot of smaller ones as well.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Additional questions for the applicant? No? Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Well, is there any discussion on the motion, which was moved by Gearboss, seconded by Rhodes, to acknowledge receipt of the memorandum? Mr. Rhodes.
I don't know how appropriate it is on this first part, but I'm not in favor of any kind of a long-term agreement with this particular firm. They're late on paying their personal property tax. They did not pay the annual rent fees in advance. So it does not appear to me that they operated as a company should in good faith. So when we get to the agreement part of it, I'm going to advocate for a much shorter term.
Okay.
May I respond to that?
Yes, please.
Okay. Our company is, we pay every bill, and typically we pay on time. And if there's a chance that we did not pay the city on time, I immediately rectified that this year when I found out that we were not current. I would be more than happy to pay, on behalf of the company, to pay the next rent for the next year in advance. I think that may have been an oversight. From time to time, with a company that's we pay, extremely large amounts of money every month out and once in a while, a bill gets misplaced or it doesn't get to the proper address or something to that effect. We also did move last year. So I just want to state that, we have 100% payment rate to our vendors. We don't miss any payments to anybody. So that is something that I would like to rectify, and I don't think that that's going to be repeated. So I just wanted to state that, I felt that if that didn't happen on time, I'm not sure how the billing exactly works in Saline, but typically we don't pay a year in advance, even though it's a low amount. We typically pay a monthly. We're billed every month. So I'm not sure what the billing situation was, but that was not intentional, and we did rectify that prior to this meeting.
The previous agreement did state annual payments in advance.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would be happy to pay the following year, immediately in advance whenever you'd like. But that was not something that fell directly upon me. But I can just tell you that we'd like to rectify that moving forward, making the payments on time and paying the property taxes on time.
Any additional discussion pertaining to this first motion to acknowledge receipt? No? Okay. Then all those in favor of acknowledging receipt of the May 30th, 2013 memo from City Manager Campbell signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. What is the consensus of this council? Would they like to offer a subsequent motion? Mr. Burgoyne.
I'd like to move to authorize for 5 years instead of 10.
Okay, to authorize.
Just change the 10 to a 5.
Okay, and so you do not wish to change the 3,780 amount or the 2% over?
No.
Okay. want to read that back? Did you get that, Mr. Rutledge? Okay. All right, so Mr. Burgoyne's motion would be to authorize a renewal agreement with 123.net Incorporated for wireless internet service with a rate of $3,780 per year per tower, with a 2% year-over-year increase and a 5-year term, and to authorize the mayor and interim city clerk to execute the agreement documents with 123.net Incorporated after review and approval by city attorney. Is that correct, Mr. Burgoyne? Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Roth. Okay. Discussion. Mr. Burgoyne.
Well, this is more than we were getting. It may not be where we feel we really want to be. We don't have a lot of other companies looking for this, and they're fairly new. They're growing, so I think at this time it may be a reasonable middle ground and look at it again in 4 years.
Additional discussion. Mr. Rhodes.
I would have offered terms of $4,000 per year per tower with a 5% year-over-year increase and a 2-year term, so that this firm can demonstrate that it can in fact do what it says it can do.
Mr. Gearbaugh?
I would kind of concur with that. Part of my concern is that I know we're looking to have your business be successful, but a lot of the individuals that are being, I guess, supported by you sound like they're on State Street and some of those areas outside of the city, which we kind of need to look at where we're getting our income and where it's coming from to support our citizens. But the other part of it is we've never had the ability to use 123.net for the city's operations that we were promised for years, and even though now you're offering the 100 meg, I don't even know if that's going to work. So I have similar concerns that, you know, over the last agreement, we had some ideas, and we struggled with having service, and then we had to go back to the T1 lines. So those aspects, I just are a little hesitant, but I agree on the shorter term, and I think I agree with Mr. Rhodes' increase on the amount to 4,000 and the 5%.
Mr. Shank, do you?
Excuse me. I don't like if you'd like to kind of follow up on that. So a little bit of backstory. Originally, when the city entered into the agreement 2 years ago, we looked at using 123.net as our wireless communication between our city buildings, so City Hall, all the outlying buildings. After extensive work with, between myself, our phone vendor, CTS, and 123.net, we weren't able to make that work. So I appreciate what Dominic's offering. Without testing it, I don't know what value that would be. I mean, it's always great to have extra bandwidth, but I don't know, even, regardless of the phone issues we've had, the technology itself is still wireless. It's still line of sight. We had radio issues. We had other kind of external things that were kind of concerns. So, like I said, without testing it and making sure it works, I don't know of what value that would necessarily be. So,
Thank you.
That's all I'd like to add.
Respond to that?
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, the type of communication that we set up at that time was actually kind of an experiment. It wasn't really what we do. It was basically like a point-to-point network between your buildings, not straight internet or phone service. We've never replicated it after that point. It was kind of something that we tried here. What I'm talking about now is much more traditional type of service that we use in a lot of large companies across the entire state of Michigan. So it's a lot different of a product than what you have now. We also at that time allowed a pretty large forgiveness of there was an actual contract in place. At that time, I think we forgave something along the lines of the entire contract was. I don't remember the exact amount, but it was much more significant that we forgave in that contract than the rent we're talking about. There was a large forgiveness given, to Saline to just exit the contract without without us having really any hard evidence of what the problems were. We just kind of said, okay, the next time that we talk, the next time that we come to these meetings, please take that into account. That we were willing to kind of forego this contract and let you do what you thought was best for your communication system. As far the other point that was made about the 2-year contract, we really would like to find a way that we don't have to come and renegotiate this every couple of years. Our typical contracts are 5 years. The reason that we put, the 10-year contract into place is just to try to give some certainty, for us as well. We would ask that you'd give us, at least 5 years to where we don't have to come and renegotiate. This is quite a different process than we would normally have to be, co-located on a tower to come and stand before a council. So I wish there could be some type of middle ground where, I think we were along the lines of a 5-year agreement. I think that bumping up to $4,000 a month is doable. But I would ask that, we could do that at a longer term.
Additional questions? First, if there are questions for the applicant. Do you have a question?
I want to amend my motion to $4,000 for 5 years.
All right. I don't think there are any additional questions, Dominic, so thank you. Appreciate it. All right, so Mr. Burgoyne is offering an amendment to his initial motion to change that $3,780 amount to $4,000. That's the only change? Okay. Mr. Roth?
I'm amenable to it.
Okay. Well, if no one else has a comment at this point, I appreciate, Mr. Burgoyne, your efforts to rectify the initial motion by modifying the 10-year terms to a 5-year term. I think that's appropriate, and I think you're moving in the right direction by adjusting the 37.8 figure to 4,000. However, if you refer to City Manager Campbell's memorandum dated May the 30th, on the first sheet in the second paragraph, he appropriately provided some analysis of neighboring adjacent communities and what they charge similar businesses for lease and use of their water towers. And so, again, I think that the 4,000 is headed in the right direction, but I actually still believe it's a little bit too low. I would be more comfortable in about the $5,000 range. I still think there's merit in having a 5-year contract as opposed to a 10, and I think probably from a business perspective, 5 makes more sense than 2. And I'm maybe a little bit more flexible on the 2% increase or 5. I could see that, argue it either way, but I do think the base number needs to be increased.
I'm amenable to the change to 5,000.
Okay, Mr. Burgoyne's going to modify his amendment further and change that 4,000 to 5,000. Mr. Roth, are you comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay. So now let me just, to be clear, Mr. Burgoyne, so your motion would read to authorize a not to authorize, excuse me, a renewal contract with 123.net for wireless internet service with a rate of $5,000 per year per tower with a 2% year-over-year increase and a 5-year term. And to authorize or not authorize the mayor and interim clerk to execute agreement with 123.net after review and approval by city attorney.
Absolutely.
Okay. Mr. Rhodes.
I'll just say that I'm more comfortable with a 2% year-over-year increase since we're starting out with a higher number.
Okay.
Concur.
Mr. Giba, okay, you're comfortable with that? All right. Is there any additional discussion? Okay, there's a motion then on the floor to move by Burgoyne, seconded by Roth, to authorize an agreement with 123.net with a base amount of $5,000 with a 2% year-over-year increase for a 5-year period, and to authorize the mayor and income clerk to execute the agreement after review and approval by a city attorney. Hearing no additional discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it and the motion carries. Okay. Moving on to discussion items, commission or committee reports. Mr. Peters.
Yes, I'd like to invite Parks Director Scruggs to the podium to talk about the Green Thumb Award with the Parks Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. We wanted to announce again that the Green Thumb Award program is going on right now, and if you have any neighbors or businesses in Saline that you'd like to nominate for their beautiful gardens or plantings they've done out in front of their homes or businesses, you can nominate them. We have nomination forms online on our website. They're available here at City Hall and also at the Rec Center. Or you can email me or whatnot, and we can get nomination forms out. So we want to encourage people to make nominations, and we're going to have the green thumb signs out very soon. We already have a few nominations, so please encourage your constituents, and yourselves can nominate as well. Thank you.
Thank you kindly. Additional commission or committee reports. Mr. Gearbaugh.
Just one from Historic District Commission. We did hear back on our ruling regarding the window replacement and such, and if Mr. Fordyce could maybe just give a little comment about that.
I don't recall the date, but there was an administrative law hearing in the federal building in Detroit. Myself, HCC Chairperson Christensen, and an attorney from Clark Hill attended the hearing. We presented our case. Not the defendant, but the party that filed the counterclaim presented their case, and very shortly the administrative law judge ruled fully in our favor that the HCC acted in compliance with the legislation and the Historic District Preservation Act that they're supposed to follow, that we followed all the rules, and that we acted properly. So the next phase is probably the difficult one, where we actually have to turn a ruling into action and get the inappropriate windows removed and replaced.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Mr. Gearbaugh. Are there any other commission or committee reports? Okay, reports or other announcements? I have two. The first of which, and some of you may already be cognizant of this, but annually at about this time each year, we conduct a evaluation of our city manager. I have been provided a template that Mayor Driscoll had used in the past. I'm going to try and revise that slightly and then share it with City Manager Campbell and then email that out to you in advance of our next meeting on the 17th. So my goal currently is to get that to you by maybe Tuesday, maybe Wednesday at the very latest next week. And then I would encourage you to print that out and take some time to think about it, fill that form out, and be prepared to discuss it thoroughly. We'll convene into closed session to conduct the city manager's evaluation, but please take some time and think critically about that, because we have a great city manager and we want him to continue to prosper, and so your words of wisdom and your advice and suggestions would be very helpful. The second is that it had been my hope after the adoption of the budget to sort of take it easy with work meetings this summer. That will not be happening. There's a number of issues that need thorough discussion and dialogue. So I spoke to our interim city clerk today. Of course, we will have, although it's not printed on your agenda, we will have a 6:30 work meeting in advance of our June 17th council meeting to discuss a request made by Maple Heights Apartments. Again, that'll be on the 17th at 6:30. On July the 1st, we will have a 6 p.m. work meeting with officials from AATA to discuss an urban core transportation plan. Then on July the 15th, we will also have a work meeting. I'm not sure yet if it will be at 6:30 or 6, it's depending on how in-depth and comprehensive the material is, but we will be discussing a request that was made by Mr. Gearbaugh and myself to consider adoption of a property maintenance ordinance. And that'll take place on July the 15th. There's a high likelihood we'll have an additional work meeting sometime in August, possibly with the Special Projects Commission to discuss abatements. I should also add that in keeping with a promise we made when we convened a special meeting with the school board some months ago, we do hope to come back, Dave Holden, the school board president, and I hope to come back sometime in July, sometime this summer, and reconvene a meeting of both legislative bodies to discuss the recommendations of that ad hoc committee we formed to discuss the possible consolidation of Saline Parks and Rec and Saline Community Education. That group has met multiple times. We just met one more time last week. There's a little bit of work that many of us need to do in advance of our next meeting. We hope to meet sometime, I think, before the end of June, if I'm not mistaken. The 19th? The 19th of June. And then once a comprehensive report is produced, I'll work with City Manager Campbell, Superintendent Graydon, and then School Board President Holden to schedule another joint meeting to discuss the outcomes of that group's analysis. So again, I'd hope for a light summer, but there's a lot of important work that needs to be done, and I think we're developing a lot of momentum. I know it's a tired phrase. There's some synergy, developing around here, and we want to keep it going, and we want to act on these very important issues. So, if you'll indulge me, I would appreciate that. So again, work meetings in 2 weeks, and then 2 in July as well. Are there any other reports or announcements? Mr. Gearbaugh.
Just an announcement. Today, the President of the United States did his proclamation for Pride Month, which is recognizing the fact of lesbian, gay, transgender, and bisexual individuals, and the idea that we as a nation, and he called upon us to eliminate prejudice wherever it exists and to celebrate the great diversity of American people. And I'd like to just remind everybody that this is the time, this month is that type of recognition, and we always should be looking forward to having a world where we have contributions from all individuals and we respect them for those contributions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gearbaugh. I think we can all agree that everyone should be treated with respect and should be free from discrimination. Absolutely. Are there additional announcements? No? Okay, then we'll transition momentarily here to social media networking. I think Mr. Rhodes sent out an email to this effect last week, and I've talked to Mr. Campbell a little bit about this, so he's going to sort of outline an approach moving forward. And then if council members have questions or comments, we would welcome them.
Thank you, Mayor. The information that Mr. Rhodes had sent out, one is Granicus, which is some time ago, as well as this Peak Democracy, and there's some other providers as well. And working with Mr. Schonk and I are evaluating these, as well as some similar software programs and such, and internet-based programming for receiving comments from residents and that type of thing. So we're going to evaluate that, and my hope is to bring it back to the first or second meeting in July for discussion. We're kind of trying them out, and so we can report back and let you know kind of the plus, minuses, pros, cons that we've found anyway, and if that's sufficient to council.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I appreciate your looking into it, and as we move forward, it seems like an appropriate use of the innovation account that we established.
Well, I appreciate you reminding us of these sort of, well, they're not technologies, but these sort of tools, and I think that's the appropriate word choice, diction, to more successfully engage and communicate effectively with our constituents. And it's a personal goal of mine, and it's a goal of this council. So I thought it was appropriate to add to the agenda, and like the city manager said, he and our RT director, Mr. Schonk, will be evaluating and analyzing some of these programs, and will come back with a recommendation sometime in July. The final discussion item, and it was touched on briefly, but maybe Mr. Skull would like to elaborate a little bit further, which is the wastewater treatment plant, septic handling improvements, and miscellaneous concrete repairs. Thank you for staying to the bitter end, too, Mr. Skull.
Bitter end is right. As discussed in the November meeting, that we looked at improvements in the wastewater plant in three separate steps in order to make it more affordable. We addressed the immediate needs, which was the digester and the gas handling. We came up with the second and third phase, which would be replacement of the septic screen and replacement of the concrete work that all need to be done, but it wasn't an immediate need, so we pushed it back 1 year. That's long and short of it.
Mr. Gearbaugh, do you have additional questions?
No, I mean, you explained more earlier on, but my concern was we as council had kind of moved ahead and said we needed to do that, but I thought that was based on information that we were at a point where potentially the repairs were needed, or the fact that it could fail and that we would be out of commission, and we're using that revenue to help address a lot of our issues at the plant. So I want to make sure that we are clear that We won't have a committee.
I don't have a crystal ball if the current machine will last that long. There's no reason it can't with some minor repair work on it. Since we were paying cash for everything, we tried to keep the price as reasonable as we could to address what we really need to do. The machine does need to be replaced. The project plan had a couple other items that, the priorities keep shifting as conditions in the plant change from day to day. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. Well, that's working now, so we're kind of focused on other things.
Okay. And that was my issue, because I thought there were some valves or something too that you said were a real concern that potentially if you tried to shut it,
and
it's
that's
done.
Well, actually, the valve repair is part of the digester job.
Okay.
Mr. Burgoyne.
My understanding, I have 3 questions. The first is, my understanding was that the septic receiving improvement would allow more volume. Is that true?
No.
It would not?
It would not.
Oh, I thought we were going to get more throughput somehow.
The limiting factor in the amount of septage isn't the screen itself or the load time or the unloading time of the drivers. It's the ability to process the waste effectively without violating our discharge permit. So that's what keeps the number down, not the rate in which we can take it in.
And so you can't change that?
Not without changes in the process, the entire process.
Okay. Okay. For some reason, I thought there was a payback on this improvement.
The payback.
Questions, Mr. Burgoyne?
Yeah, I have 3.
Please.
The second question I have is on odor. Is this process more connected with odor than the digesters?
No, the replacement of the screen shouldn't have any effect on the odor one way or another. Again, the odor scrubber simply ventilates, it removes air over basically the RBCs and the secondary tanks. The septic receiving station is not plumbed in or vented in, I guess would be a better term, to the existing odor scrubber.
So it'll have no effect?
Should not.
Okay. And my third question was that the new system that was proposed was going to change the vendors, the people, the contributors, customers, from pay when you're billed to pay up front. Is that correct?
Well, there were several options we could look at in the future when we do replace the machine. There are card readers in which a vendor can go and purchase credit, and then they swipe their card and it's automatically deducted from what they already paid. Or we could use a credit card reader. Either system would work, where they simply ring their card and it's billed to the business's Visa card.
My concern with changing the cash flow of these businesses is that we might not get as many people bringing their product down if you impacted their cash flow and made them pay up front somehow. So I just wanted that to be thought of as you think this process over.
Additional questions, comments from Mr. Scull?
No, I appreciate you being here tonight to answer our questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Bob. Any other discussion items? No, then we move on to public comments. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time and make comment or question to City Council. This public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested but not required to state his or her name and address for the record. Are there any citizen comments? No? Okay, is there any other business to come before Saline City Council this evening? This is a rather long but I think very productive meeting, so thank you all. And again, we have a work meeting at 6:30 on the 17th, followed by a regular meeting, and then a 6 p.m. work meeting on the 1st, followed by a regular meeting at 7:30. We do not have any absences, so we do not need to excuse any of our colleagues. So I would entertain a motion at this time to adjourn at 10:37 p.m.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Gearbaugh to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Peters. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. This meeting's adjourned.